Hello, everybody! Welcome to the Atomic Salt Live Show. This is the show that we talk about everything related in the hobby world of tabletop and miniature gaming. I am Wild Chevy. I am joined by Rocket Yeti. Casey, how's it going?
Hola, ¿cómo estás, Alan?
All right, it looks like he's gone a little south of the border this week. And joining us this week, we have Dexter from Shark Banner Laser. How is it going, Dexter?
Oh, not too bad. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you on the show.
We ought to introduce Dexter a little bit more. I mean, he's so much more than the founder, president, CEO, and employee of the year of Shark Banner Lasers. I mean, the man is actually, America's representation at, in the global infinity scene. He co-hosts his own podcast, The Krug. And let's not forget, he has an amazing singing voice, and the man can dance like he
Yeah, no, it's been cool growing in the community, of course. Infinity is, of course, my main shtick. Got the podcast, got the company that's pretty closely intertwined with Infinity and its success. So yeah.
All right. We normally start off with talking about what we've done this week in the hobby realm. Casey, have you painted or played this week at all?
I haven't done any playing this week. I've been doing a lot of painting. So I've been working on a competition piece for upcoming painting comp. I'm sorry, I wish I could show off some pictures here, but I probably shouldn't. Some of the judges might actually be watching this show. That's a little unfair. But I'm really excited because I'm using I've just built out the model. I did all the fit tests, everything like that. But I primed it, and I used like a 3-layer prime. I did a black prime, a gray prime, and a white prime to do kind of like a zenith highlighting on it. And it's kind of the first time I've done that before, but it turned out very well. There's some really cool black to white color gradients going on, so I'm off to a good start. What about you, Alan? You do anything?
This week I have not done any playing. I have done some painting. I did get. Let me show you guys here the screen share. And I just gotta find it. I painted. I've been doing some painting. This is just a little long time commission paint job. It's a Jeanne d'Arc 2.0. Got this finished up just recently.
Okay, cool. That's a cool looking.
Yeah, it's I kind of learned a few of the tips and tricks I gathered at Gen Con. So she's got the airbrush shading overall, and then the white lining armor and the black lining on the crevices. So it's a little new trick I picked up. So still need to practice on it.
So that white line, are you doing that by brush, or are you doing that like a regular hand brush, or is that an airbrush detail that you're doing?
No, that is all regular brush.
Okay.
And how about you, Dexter? Have you done any gaming or playing?
Well, I've played a bit of Infinity this week. Started a Escalation League this year. The new tournament setting, ITS 2014, for Infinity included rules for an escalation tournament. So we started one last week, and I got myself handed a solid defeat by a new player. So that was wholesome.
Okay, so I got to ask you then, how does this work? As a veteran player, I know you got a couple of different armies in Infinity. When you do an escalation league, are you playing with the army that you already have, and you're just bringing more stuff, or are you starting a new faction?
Well, in this case, I was starting a completely new army. I have the vast majority of them, but when I was in Spain over in July for the World Tournament, the Interplanetary Tournament, I picked up the Toha army. So I've finally been putting that together. And to those of you out there who have seen me play or whatnot, putting my models together is a big step for me. So I'm kind of excited to start slinging some paint and getting them, actually ready.
Yeah, those are. I've painted up the starter box for the Toho, and those are fun models to paint. So.
Yeah, they're a lot different than what I'm used to. Obviously, due to the alien physiology, luckily they're humanoid. But color scheme-wise, I am lost. So I'm looking forward to play with the palette a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think the skin tone, like, I mean, the paint job that they've done is great, but I'm not a real fan of like that pale bone skin tone and then all the pale bone armor. So,
well,
yeah, definitely play with it.
Yeah, well, to quote Carlos, they are in fact artichoke people. So it's proper to have them, artichoke heart-colored or maybe more green. Who knows?
I totally. Oh shit! Now I gotta find them. I totally painted mine green. like no kidding. So like the funny story behind that, like the reason why it's hilarious is you know the guys from well, it used to be the 012, but now it's Mayacast, right?
Yes, Tom Shadle and Kip Parcell.
Right. So they're down in Arizona, and there is a university down there called University of Scottsdale, and it's like a really artsy, fartsy kind of school. And I don't have any pictures on my computer. Screw it. Whatever. Anyways, it's such an artsy school, and they decided that they were going to bring in a football team to try and increase revenue for the school. And the art students just like almost rioted. And so since they never had a mascot before, they had to come up with one. And so they left it to the students to come up with the nickname. And the students actually, because they were so pissed about it, actually came up with the artichokes. And so they're actually called the Scottsdale Fighting Artichokes. And so when 012 started calling them the artichoke heads, I was like, I know where that's from. I know where they call them that. I'm sorry. It's late. I've got us distracted.
But I mean, they're aliens, so you could paint them up anything you want.
Yeah. That's true. And coming down the line, I'm quite excited about this. They've just released the teaser pictures. This was actually at Gen Con of the Dark Toho.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So that gives you a whole new opportunity to paint an artichoke.
The demon artichoke.
Artichokes from hell.
There's something fantastic about the artichoke Sith Lord.
Isn't it great? Like, Carlos is like, no, that's not what it is. That's not what it is at all. And you're like, it is. It kind of is.
Yeah.
All right, so if you guys haven't figured out, we've been talking a lot about Infinity already. We've got Dexter here, who's all about Infinity. We're just talking about Infinity tonight. But before we get started, let's talk a little bit about what we see over in the background there, Shark-Mounted Lasers. That's your company, Dex.
Correct.
So what does Shark-Mounted Lasers produce?
Well, we mainly make wargaming terrain, specifically for a game called Infinity. Started this last summer, and mainly because we needed a lot of terrain for Feast of Blades. The company was born out of my complete lack of wanting to make another Infinity table by hand again, because I had spent the summers previous to that one building like 4 tables, and it took me the entirety of a summer to build them. So it was born mainly out of necessity in that respect. But so now, making new buildings. Of course, I have my classic lines that have been out for a while, mainly budget concerned terrain pieces. So they might not necessarily be as artistic or flowy and all that sort of shenanigans, but they're functional. They serve their purpose, and they're relatively inexpensive. That being said, as time has progressed, and now actually behind me you see my new office. I just moved in last week. I'm getting into some more fancy terrain lines and some other things, gaming accessories, paint racks, all sorts of things like that. So really starting to expand into some other things.
Okay, yeah, I don't want you to sell yourself short here. I've got a couple pieces. This is some stuff I got from you about a year or so ago at Feast of Blades. But so this is like your the famous L-shaped building here.
Isn't that
you
a
know, you
crafty
say
name?
it's for what?
It's a crafty name.
It is. So I mean, but I want to show you guys, like, if you take a look, I mean, there's a lot of detail on these things. You know, I mean, you've got, I can't even work my camera right tonight. You know, I mean, you've even got like door panels. I haven't painted them because I'm a horrible person, but there's a lot of detail all over these things. You
Yeah,
know,
no,
here's like an antenna array. So I don't want you to say, oh, it's like a budget, you know, like budget consumed minded, because they are well priced. But at the same time, it's not just like a box, you know, like a wooden box that just kind of slots together.
true, true. Oh well, I mean, oh, we're doing some screen sharing. Look at that.
Yeah, I see a train. That thing looks beautiful.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's part of one of our new lines that's coming. Well, that one's actually already out. The industrial train yard. We have various, different train cars for that. We're coming out with a new train, so on and so forth. We also have the retro futurism line,
Yeah,
which
and this has something
improved
cool.
building.
Which before you get into it, I want to say, when I saw you did this kind of blew me away because I've never seen anybody do anything quite like that. Like,
Yeah,
you
that
kind of
took a
started
lot-
out playing with like the flex crate, but these are really sweet. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's one of the rounded buildings from the retrofuturism line, and yeah, they're really unique. They have curved sides, which is unprecedented. Really, took a lot of maths, and considering I'm not a maths guy, it took a long time. But they turned out, and they're pretty cool. They're very sturdy. That's one of the neat things. Is once you get them put together, one of my common things is I will stand on them just to show off their rigidity. And then, of course, I have the new line, which isn't out yet. This is a preview, the Neo Tokyo line, and they're more like apartment complexes, so they're all stackable. They all this one isn't even all together yet. I just picked it up, but a little bit more
that is
detailing on them. Let's see. Oops.
That looks pretty cool.
Yeah. So we're making
And you
more.
carried over a lot of the same aesthetics, so something like that would still look great with like my old like Generation 1 stuff. It's not going to look out of place next to it.
Yeah. That's one thing is we've tried to. I mean, the aesthetics of the future are kind of difficult to grasp, and there's a lot of different visions. But we've tried to make. I say we as if I'm like a whoa, but the corporate we. I've tried to maintain a cohesive look to where it doesn't look out of place necessarily.
Yeah, and like I think that's really important when you're building a board. Because at first I was like, I know, I'm gonna buy $50 worth of stuff from Dexter. I'm gonna throw it down in the middle of the table. I'm gonna use all the rest of my cardboard buildings around it, and it's gonna look amazing. Those are my circuits. And it really just kind of shows off like how sucky the rest of my terrain is. I'm gonna have to hit you up here in a couple weeks. But because it's important, because like when you play a game like Infinity, you really need a lot of terrain.
You do, and that's one of the I don't want to say a downfall of the game, because considering how much it costs to get into the game, for the first 2.5 years I was playing, I had spent about $150 on my tournament lists. And I didn't need any more than that. It was a fully competent tournament-level army, and you don't see that with many other war games. That being said, the amount of terrain that's needed to host a tournament or to simply host a game on your own is quite hefty.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a balance of it because from what I heard from the folks over who played at Interplanetary, there's a lot less terrain over there than like what we've seen at like Gen Con. Gen Con was like packed full of terrain.
Correct. And that's actually one of the unique things that I learned going to Spain, because of course you can read about it on the forums and all that, but you don't really feel it until you've played on an authentic table. And yeah, the amount of terrain they use is pallid comparatively. The main reason for this is not necessarily because it's supposed to be played with less terrain, but simply because that's what they have and that's what they play with. When you're hosting the Interplanetary Tournament and you need 40 tables worth of terrain, it's difficult to get that up to the same standard that we have at Gen Con. Gen Con was only hosting 14 tables, if I recall correctly. So it's Carlos. When I was talking to him, he was envious of the American levels of terrain because it was a lot more than what he's used to. And that actually opens up an interesting nuance to the game of Infinity. The game that we play here in the States and the game they play in Spain is different, is palpably different because of the amount of terrain they use. Here in the United States, because we use denser tables, at least generally speaking, the weapons like chain rifles that are direct template weapons, shotguns, and more close-range weapons have quite an advantage because it's easy to cross the board and use them on the enemy. In Spain, because of their because of their lack of terrain, weapons like that, or skirmish troops, or close combat, things like that, are more difficult to use. So the tactica and all that sort of thing is quite a bit different between the two playing groups. So it's been really kind of unique, and it's not something you necessarily see with any other sort of war game.
Did you see a lot more airdrop troops in your games?
In Spain, I can't say that we did. In any of it wasn't really something that I saw more of than here in the States. That being said, our local gaming groups tends to use a lot of airdrop troops. For those of you not listening, the airdrop troops have the option to basically deep strike, so you place a template anywhere on the board, or you can deploy them as like reserves off the table edge. And there's a lot more to it, but putting it simply, because of our terrain density, it becomes difficult to place the template on the table. So a lot of our players just default to going onto the side of the board.
Yeah, and that with the N2 rules, you can't drop in on top of a building.
Correct, unless the building is bigger than the template.
So do you think maybe as Americans we're playing the game wrong? Like, I remember you were talking on the crew, laying awake at night saying, I don't know how to actually play this game. I thought I did, but I don't. Are we going, we are applying our American enthusiasm to, creating like these picturesque, cityscape boards? Do we need to start scaling it back to maybe make the point values in this game make a little bit more sense? Because, you can get a chain rifle model for dirt cheap.
Truth be told, I don't think that's the real case here. I think that, admittedly, some of the troops that we find incredibly powerful, or the armies that have more of that sort of troop, they're found as powerful here, whereas in Spain they're not. And I actually think that speaks to the depth of the game of Infinity. The very fact that the amount of terrain on the board affects the game, your army composition, all of that sort of thing, so much that it keeps players awake at night. I think that speaks more to the game than necessarily we are playing it right or wrong. And the cool thing is the rules themselves adjust to whatever layer, of or however much terrain or whatever you're using. Just the tactica is different. So I think that actually is one of the cool things with Infinity. You can have a super dense urban cityscape and fight a battle, and it will be balanced and that sort of thing. Or you can play more open, jungle army or setting, as we had at Gen Con. It was a bit more of an open table, and both play well. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. And no, the Americans aren't necessarily doing it wrong. I had kind of an existential crisis in Spain because I'm like, what? I know how to play this game, don't I? And I yes, we do it differently. It's not wrong. And the Spanish, I think what we're really kind of working towards in going over there and showing them what our tables look like and that sort of thing, I feel like we're coming to a more common ground somewhere in the middle between the two, between a very sparse battlefield and a very dense battlefield, simply for the sake of international competition. When you have the American players, so flabbergasted by a minor nuance, it's good to kind of level the playing field. And I think that now, as Infinity is growing, it's not necessarily as niche a game. We're going to start seeing a more, some sort of equilibrium found.
That was incredibly in-depth. Are you planning on writing, like, this is a doctoral thesis? Or it sounds like very professional here.
I play Infinity too much. I think that's really all we can attribute that to.
I don't think you could play too much. So I mean, like right here we have, this is from Gen Con. This is one of the boards out in their area. I mean, that to me seems that's like maybe a little bit too much terrain for myself.
Yeah, so that is a table made by Guillermo down in New Mexico, and he makes some gorgeous tables. Don't get me wrong, but that is one of the common concerns that a lot of players have. Is just I mean, that's a lot of buildings, and especially to a new player, they look at this and they expect this to be the standard, that this is what a table is expected to look like, which can be intimidating. But also, some would argue that, yeah, that's a little bit too much. And I think that the real comparison is going from the tables in New Mexico, such as Magno's, and the tables in Vigo in Spain. And Colorado, we've kind of adjusted our tables to be somewhat in the middle. It's taken a bit getting used to, but I think that, yeah, we're finding a balance there. One of the cool things that I like to see at like a tournament scenario is some of the tables being more dense than the others, simply so it shows the strengths and weaknesses of the different troop profiles, and it makes you think, again, it adds another level to the thought process of army building.
So for those that were at Feast of Blaze last year, the Infinity tables, are they going to be a little sparser this year then, or are they going to be about what we saw last year then?
They might be a little more sparse. The tournament organizer is a gentleman named Joe, Enduro Joe on the forums, and truth be told, I'm not really sure what he's planning. We're more excited about having Carlos out than we are about the tournament. But yeah, so I'd say maybe a little bit less sparse than last year.
Great. Yeah, I'm just crazy excited for Feast of Blaze, but we'll talk about that later. Something you brought up a few minutes ago was like unit composition, and the things that we consider to be really strong here are not, maybe not as strong, or kind of get turned on their head in other places. Now, I would never ever spend company time, looking, going on wargaming sites or using the army. But if I did, let's say I came up with a list that had like 20 or 30 Coon Riders in it. I kind of freaked myself out when I built this because I was like, hey, Coon are awesome and they're dirt cheap and they look cool. So what if I want like a full biker game? Because I saw some guy who had actually been working on a full biker game on the Infinity forums.
So,
And
go ahead.
and I just like I put down this list and I was like, holy crap, they're all impetuous and they've all got smoke launchers and they're stupid fast because they're on motorcycles and how does anybody survive this? And I had the thought, I'm like, I just broke Infinity. Crap, you know.
Well, first of all, I would hate to be your pocketbook if you were buying a 30 Coom Rider army. That being said, this army has been played. There's a gentleman in Australia who has gone through the laborious task of converting and modifying the new Coom bikes and having upwards, I've counted at least like 16 in any one shot on the table. And there are other armies that can do similar things. The Coom themselves are in the teens point range, but there are armies such as Caledonia, which is the Scots, and they have 5-point or 6-point models. And most of the armies have something similar to that, a warband that is cheap. It doesn't have long-range weapons. It's mainly close combat oriented, so on and so forth. And they're even cheaper, 5 points. So in a 300-point army, you can have a full swarm of the darn things. Where this comes out, where it's not breaking the game as such, first you have to realize they're all impetuous. And what that means is they have to run at the closest enemy model. So obviously that if you put a total reaction bot, which in Infinity means that you can react with the full firepower as you would during your active phase on the reactive phase, you can put down 2 or 3 of those on the field and have yourself a pile of free motorcycles, because the enemy is literally required by the rules to charge, full run into your machine guns. So that's one way around it. Additionally, there are just some shenanigans you can pull against those sort of armies. For example, if you go first, you can maneuver one of your models within, say you have an airdrop troop, you move it into their backfield onto a roof, and suddenly all of their motorcycles have to turn around and go towards their board edge. So there are some shenanigans that can be pulled to counter that sort of army. That being said, they're still powerful, and there is a little bit of merit to their, the gameability of them. But generally, how we in the United States, and again, Spain sometimes limits it to 3. Here in the States, we usually have a soft limit at 2 combat groups. Now, a combat group is 10 models. So generally speaking, and this might be an unspoken rule, in all honesty, but generally speaking, you're limited to 10 to 20 models at the 300 points range. So that eliminates a lot of the abuse that can happen with Infinity. That being said, 400 points is becoming a new tier of tournaments. So we're still in we've had a year to play with them, and the 2 combat group thing has worked. We might expand it to 3, but generally speaking, it's still maintained pretty well with the 2 combat group unspoken expectation.
Now, what kind of meta did you see over there in Spain versus here? Like, was it a lot of link team? Was it a lot of tags?
So the main thing that was a resounding surprise to me was the amount of tags they used. Now, it's not that I personally, in terms of my playstyle, I think that tags are very expensive. It's putting a lot of eggs in a basket that's easy to shoot. Okay. So I've never really fancied them, and in the States you see them occasionally, but it's not commonplace. In Spain, it was rare to see an army composed without one. There are a variety of reasons to this. First of all, of course, the tables are more open, so the weapons that are found on a tag are more, functional, so on and so forth. But additionally, they play cover um, a bit differently than we do in the States. And because
Right.
of this, again, slight different understanding in how the rules should be played out, it has completely changed their meta. So it's very easy to gain cover in the Spanish system. So that means that your tags have an additional +3 to their armor and become harder to hit. So it makes them really a bastion of defense when in comparison to here in the States where they're just kind of a big, cumbersome guy that you have a difficulty maneuvering between the buildings themselves in some cases.
And, like, I know the QK army I'm building up. I kind of built them around Scarface here. Just because, you know what, Scarface and Cordelia, pretty badass.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, and that's I guess one of the shames here in the United States is the tags are such a fundamental part of the game and of the lore, and they just look darn right cool. When someone comes into the shop and they're, oh, what's Infinity? I pull out a Yodam or, one of the cool legendary tags, and they're like, sign me up.
That's funny because it was actually probably that model, the Scarface model, that finally sold me on Infinity. Alan showed he's like, oh, check out this cool picture of this. And I was like, that's it. I got to play this game. So,
Exactly. Well, and, the tag thing, they're played here in the U.S. In fact, Darren Hutchinson, he's down a player in Texas. He has done incredibly well at the past few tournaments I've seen him at, consistently getting second, admittedly, but he's running a tag in his army, and he has, shown some pretty hardened veterans what a tag can do to them.
So or you could just play a left where you have Achilles, who is a tag, but he's the size of a regular model.
Well,
or Ajax.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ajax, because he's 40, some odd points compared to a tag, which is usually in the hundreds, or 100, not hundreds. Don't get.
Yeah. So when you saw all these tags being used, were they using them offensively, or you mentioned they were a bastion of defense? Were they more of kind of like a standoff, like a fire support platform, or were they trying to ram them with them?
They were using them very aggressively. Again, because it was so easy for them to get cover. I say they were acting defensively. Their offense was very strategic in a way because they were maintaining cover the majority of the time. But yeah, in the majority of the cases, that was their primary aggressor. So I compare it here in the States. Most people use their tags relatively aggressively.
Now, the ITS missions currently are half of them very focused on needing specialists. And I've played a game where I've had Ajax come down the flank, completely wipe me out in the second turn, but I had a specialist take one of the antennas, and I won the game. I mean, so our tags versus needing specialists in your list, is that a balance issue?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I never take a tag. Again, if you're looking at something that costs 90 to 110 points, or even more, there's the Avatar, which is 150 some odd points. It becomes very difficult to build a army that can complete the objectives of the game match and have those sort of heavy firepower units. So again, it speaks to the nuance of the game. It is this constant balance. Yes, you can have a huge mech that stomps down the battlefield and completely destroys the enemy. Yet at the end of the day, if you haven't, rescued the VIP or, whatever the scenario might ask you to do, you lose. And I think that's really cool. On that account, compared from last year's tournament scenarios to this year's tournament scenarios to next year's tournament scenarios, which we actually haven't seen yet, just by changing the metrics of how the tournaments are run or what the objectives are, it opens up a whole new arena of what is good and what is bad. So every year we see this kind of new armies become incredibly powerful, whereas last year they were like, eh. So I think that's one of the really cool things about it.
You mentioned how important specialists are, and Alan talked about how you can win a game with a single specialist. Is there, because there's certain armies like Ariadna, you play vanilla Ariadna, and you could take, everybody's got like either mechanized deployment or some kind of infiltration, and they're almost all nearly camouflage, or you can full camo if you want to as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, does that defeat the purpose of a tag at that point? I mean, again, I'm looking at how do I try and break this game? I come from a 40K background, as a lot of people do, and that's what you play for. I mean, that's what you do in 40K is you break the game. You find what's good, you copy it ad nauseum until you basically broken it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been playing for quite a while now, and I have yet to find anything that is, completely, game shattering or anything. Admittedly, there are the occasional things that have you questioning if a rule is truly balanced or whatnot. But generally speaking, those ones that you see topically, they're kind of one-trick ponies when it comes to the all-camo Ariadna army. If it's your first time playing against that army, it will probably destroy you heartedly. That being said, you will learn your lesson. You will adjust your tactica, adjust your deployment, adjust all of these sort of things, and you will learn how to maneuver to defeat those sort of armies. So a lot of them, another one of them, the overpowered or breaking rules, is a combined army rule called Sepsitor, which allows you to take over enemy models as your own. And yeah, topically it sounds, that's completely, game shattering if he could just take all my models. But it's not. It's a matter of learning how to play against it. So if it's your first time going against it, just like us, invading and guerrilla warfare, that didn't work very well the first time we found it. But we've learned to maneuver around it. And that's, again, it speaks to kind of the coolness of this game is you will encounter things that will completely, annihilate you, but then you go back to your notes or whatnot, and whoa, I could do this, this, and this, and suddenly that army is incredibly weak. So yes, there are those armies out there. One of Crusher, who's again one of the New Mexico players, one of his armies is a all camouflage Ariadna army, and every time it is fielded against me, it's retreating by the top of turn 2. Because there's just a certain way that you have to go about dealing with those. When I was first starting,
okay, and now let me interrupt you real quick, and you're doing this with like a general take all comers type list, right? You're not fielding a specifically to kill all camo army list.
No.
Right.
So
this is a take all comers list.
Exactly. And that's something that I really try to stick to. In most of the tournaments, you are allowed 2 lists, and most people take a annihilation list, which is simply to kill the enemy, and one that's objective-based, which is, again, to collect these objectives and so on and so forth. I try to build lists that complete both of those objectives, and then master that list. And that's something that I think is really important about this game, is you can take just about any list that's out there, and when you learn to play it, you can be an incredibly powerful, any army can be incredibly powerful. It's said in the community, it's not your list, it's you. If you're being defeated. And there's, of course, debate on that sort of thing. In fact, I'm one of the more vocal members saying that there is a big component of it is list generation. But that being said, generally speaking, yeah, I always take all-comer lists. And sometimes it's a matter of fitting in tools. It's like filling your toolkit with things that will help you against camouflage. So, for example, Sixth Sense Level 2 allows you to engage simultaneously with camouflage troops. Link teams that are 4 men or greater get that ability. So you can, if you come to the table with that sort of thing in mind, you can build general lists that have the capability to take on, all camouflage armies, tag-heavy armies, hacker-heavy armies, so on and so forth.
And then, a lot of some of those exploits we've seen with the previews of N3 have taken away some of that as well. No mad missile spam. Now that you can actually get a defensive role against that, it's great. The way they've changed camo attack, our ARO gives you a small advantage to counter.
Mm-hmm. So that's the main, the number one goal of 3rd edition of Infinity was to make it to where you are never not granted the opportunity to do something in ARO. Because right now, those are some of the more, questionable, army compositions, are the ones that you can act and the enemy does not get to react to you. And yeah, it's really powerful in a game where the ARO, or the reaction order, is so important. In 3rd edition of Infinity, they've gotten rid of that. So be it a camouflage model, be it a guided missile coming down onto your position, so on and so forth, there's always a way for you to, or there will always be the opportunity to dodge or to do something in reaction to it, getting rid of most of the problems. Additionally, there's some of the concerns. Infinity is very good about listening to its player base. There was in their Gen Con panel, that was one of their jokes that they were running. Is they when they announced that the forums were going down, there was an uproar, so they reversed the decision on that. They wanted one of the big movements was for a female wolfer. Now, for those of you not listening or not Infinity players, you won't get this reference, but there was a model type that was basically these wolves, or the lycanthropes, werewolves, and the players were so vocal in wanting a female variant of it, the guys went ahead and made it. So they're very active in the community itself, and with the 3rd edition of Infinity, they've listened to some of the gripes and concerns that players have had, and they've tried to find a solution to it.
If you go on the internet, you will always find one person complaining about something. And then that starts off everybody else complaining about something. Could this become a problem someday for Corvus Belli? I mean, if they're always listening, if they're always trying to make the internet happy, they're never going to do it. I mean, are we going to start seeing big shifts from edition to edition where they're rewriting rules, or do you think that they're trying to settle on a final form here at some point?
I think that with every iteration of the game, they've narrowed it more and more into the a final variant. I think everyone in the wargaming community is tired of edition creep. So. I think that every year, they're trying to bring it closer and closer to perfection, or whatever you may call it. That being said, yeah, listening to the community can be great, but democracy is 3 wolves deciding the fate of 2 sheep, and that might not be the best solution in some cases. So the cool thing with with the ownership. The collective of Infinity, some of them are very personally outspoken, and if they have an opinion of their own, even if the community is fighting against it, there are some things that they are not willing to change or make amends to. I think that up to this point it's been very positive for Infinity, and I don't really see it getting to the point where the advice and recommendations of the Fanatic Pete, as it's referred to on the forums, becomes too big of a problem.
Fair enough. You mentioned Carlos is coming out to Feast of Blades, right?
Correct.
So you and some of the other Craig members had quite a bit of hand in that happening. Am I right?
Pardon me?
You guys had a big hand. The Krug had a big part in playing and making sure that Carlos came out there, right?
Yeah, so of course last year Gutierrez came out, and he's one of the main rules guys for Infinity. He came out, and we had an absolute blast with him at Feast of Blades. And this year we wanted to make sure and keep the community excited and bring out one of the other members. So we brought out Carlos. Carlos is you'll see him all the time on all of the Beast of War videos. All of Gen Con, he's their main.
He's an amazing guy. I mean, he's like the most friendly person you'll ever meet.
Exactly. He's an absolute blast. So we're not to mention he stood more in line with the Krug's motto, because we have a motto. But we had a real culture shock when we learned that Gutierrez didn't drink. So we wanted to make sure and bring someone out who would appreciate the Infinity atmosphere that we bring to the table.
And for you guys who don't know, Denver has an amazing microbrew scene.
We do. We have within like 30 miles of my house, we have like 70 breweries or something absolutely ridiculous. So we definitely do have a beer-driven community in terms of our affinity group. So Carlos is coming out, and it's going to be an absolute blast. The entirety of the Colorado community pitched to bring him out. So we're all really excited to have him. And if you're listening and you're on the fence, I definitely recommend coming by Feast of Blades to meet him if you haven't, or to join us in our revelry afterwards.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, how many times last year did they have to announce, that people could go back to the bar because they tapped another keg because everything else was out?
Yeah, that poor hotel bar just did not understand what they were about to deal with.
Like 9 o'clock, the bartenders are like looking completely shell-shocked.
We have that effect. You should have seen Blue Dagger and I in Spain. The whole country was dry. It was a problem.
Whoa. So, other than Carlos and copious amounts of drinking, what other Infinity events are going on out there at Feast of Blades?
Shucks.
That's it.
No. To tell you the truth, I've been so caught up on all the revelrous aspects of it. I'm not too terribly sure what all's going on. But we have on top of we have 2 tournaments that are being run. One of them is the Feast of Blades main tournament, 300 points, Spec Ops, so on and so forth. It's going to be on Saturday, and then on Sunday we have a team tournament, and it's going to be kind of unique. I've never actually played in a team tournament myself, and I'm still not 100% sure of the logistics on it because I am a horrible planner. I was approached last week, and he's like, "How would you like to buy an army to play the team tournament with?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a team tournament?" So, but that should be pretty fun. And then in the evenings, we're having various skirmish games. Last year we had the Tag Rumble, which is basically you bring a tag, have them go neck to neck, or a kind of a Survivor-esque matchup where you take 3 models, 75 points, and you're running them in kind of a gladiatorial arena and that sort of thing. So we'll have events like that going as well throughout the weekend.
Okay.
Now, for somebody new coming into Infinity, going to an event like this, what would you tell them? Because like here in Utah, we've got the Salt City Gladiator games coming up just a few weeks after Feast of Blades. There's actually going to be a Infinity ITS. What would you tell people who are kind of ramping up to something like that?
Ramping up to a tournament or
Yeah, first time going to a tournament.
Well, to tell you the truth, the majority of our players had some of their first games in a tournament. Even in Spain, at the Interplanetary, there were 2 or 3 people who had very few games under their belt. And I would recommend wholesomely, of course, don't come in completely, cold turkey on it. But if you feel, at least rudimentarily confident with your skills in the game, I'd recommend showing up to those ITS events, getting some more games under your belt, because they're an excellent way to play, see what other people are bringing to the table, and that's a lot of what Infinity is learning again the tactics and how different people play and that sort of thing. So if you are on the fence about going to an ITS tournament due to your experience level, I wouldn't let that stand between you and having a great time playing Infinity.
Okay. Now, what if a person said, I've got 240 points in my list built, but, my last couple things aren't completely painted or maybe built all the way?
He has more of his army built than I do.
No excuse, Casey.
Says Ajax on it is Ajax.
I have garnered. I've had fun poked at me on a litany of continents at this point for the ramshackle nature of my miniatures. When I was back in my Warhammer days, I would field these, great, fully painted, fully built, all that sort of stuff armies. And now that I'm playing Infinity, where I have like 10 models, it's hard for me to keep their arms on. But if the problem is that they're not built, at last year's Feast of Blades, I purchased my army the night before and built them the morning of. I'm not proud of my situation, but here's the reason why. I spend all of my time making terrain so people can play the darn games that I don't have time to build my own models. Or at least that's my excuse. I have plenty of time. I'm just a horrible person.
Well, you run a company that builds terrain for Infinity. You do a podcast for Infinity. I think you're contributing to the community in other ways, so don't feel too bad about it.
Well, it's funny to be, people will come up to me and like, oh, you're Dexter from the Krug, and then they look down at the pile of metal and they're like, oh. So it might be due time for me to actually, I got my Aleph primed. I think I got the base coated. So by goodness, I'm moving ahead. It's only taken me 2 years.
Snazzy. Okay, so speaking about getting stuff started up, you only need, 10 models is about average, right? So now that you've been watching for the last, 50 minutes and you don't know what Infinity is, one, you're kind of stupid, but thank you for sticking with us, because I don't know why you watch this otherwise. But what would you say the best way to get started with Infinity-wise? I mean, obviously like a starter box, but we're looking at those insanely huge tables. From Gen Con.
Yeah.
What do we like? How do you get your table built up without breaking the bank?
Well, you buy Sharkman Laser.
Yeah. No, what I'd really recommend doing, and this is what I've found works the best. Find a game store that's willing to support it. That's your number one goal. And that's kind of difficult in and of itself. If you're not going into a pre-established community, it's very difficult to get one going because of the terrain requirements and that sort of thing. But I'd recommend getting together with a few of your friends, pitching a few bucks to get a table going. And once you have one, it kind of builds on itself. Go on YouTube, find some of the terrain tutorials for the simple stuff. One of our favorite things that we used at Feast of Blades, we take wooden blocks that we buy at Hobby Lobby, we cover them with a glue, a watered down glue solution, cover them with a like cheesecloth or paper towel, or watered down paper towel stuff, and it looks like tarped crates, and that makes great scatter terrain. So a lot of this you can really do on a budget. For your buildings, yeah, I'd recommend giving some of the different companies a look and seeing what your different options are. A lot of them I'm offering like a table deal, so a full table's worth of terrain, for a discount off of that. So things like that. Additionally, the new Ice Storm starter box is coming out. It hasn't reached stores yet. I have one sitting next to me. You have one behind you. It comes with some great paper terrain. I can actually grab some. Actually, I can't. I don't know where that went. Whatever the case, here's some unbuilt. Whatever the case, it's just a simple cardboard. It's very nicely printed and all that sort of stuff. Once you put it together, it comes with about I'd say enough for a third of a table. So that's a good start. If you and your friend both buy starter boxes, that sort of thing, once you get that terrain put together, you're already pretty far on your way to having a full Infinity-ready table ready to go.
Awesome. So, well, Dex, I appreciate you talking to us. We're coming up on the hour mark, and it's about the time to shut it off because, I'm going to start drinking or swearing at this point and end the show. And you've kept it clean too, and I appreciate that. I know it's got to be killing you. So.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me, and hopefully, if you're on the fence or if you've never heard of Infinity or anything like that, definitely give it a look-see. It's at infinitythegame.com. Check out some of their new releases that are coming out. Encourage your game stores to get in a starter box of Operation Ice Storm. There's some great-looking miniatures in there. If you're just a painter, I'd encourage you to look at the range because it's just gorgeous. But yeah, no. So thank you very much.
It's a game for everybody.
Pardon?
Yep, you're right. It's a game for everybody. It's a painter's dream. Extremely tactical game, and it's an affordable one. So there's not a lot of good reasons to not play it.
Exactly.
Basically what you said, not as eloquently. So that's it for us. Alan, take us out of here.
So, Dex, before we go, please tell everybody where they can find you online and your other side projects.
Oh, all right. Well, you can find shark-mounted lasers if you Google that, because I've somehow beaten Austin Powers in the SEO. I'm quite pleased with that. Sharkmountedlasers.com is the website. You should also check us out on Facebook. The majority of our cool upcoming stuff is on there, as well as an occasional contest. Not to mention, I really encourage people to chime in with things they'd like to see made, so on and so forth, because otherwise it gets lonely in this warehouse. Additionally, check out thekrug.com. That is the Infinity podcast that I'm one of the co-hosts on. And here in the next week or so, we'll be debuting the first episode of Drinking with Dexter and Gavin, which is a drinking podcast with an infinity problem. For those of you who are looking for just a little something extra to encourage you and entertain you throughout a endurance painting session or something.
Look forward to hearing that.
And we will have links to those things below the show.
Pardon?
We will have links to those things below the show. So.
Oh, perfect. Yes. But yeah, no. So that's me. Thank you again for having me. It's been a blast. And if you have any Infinity questions or anything, feel free to shoot them my way.
All right, and folks, if you're going to Vista Blades, be sure to check out Sharkman Lasers. Also, if you're looking for airbrush, Grex, very good airbrushes. I've demoed those at Gen Con.
Yeah, no. Grex is a shameless plug. I just have a sign back here. They're great airbrushes for the beginner who is just getting into them. We have some really unique stuff in that respect. So.
All right, that's it for the show tonight, folks. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, put them down below. We'd love to hear from you. Like this if you like this. Share with your friends. We'll be back next week with another show. I've been Wild Chevy. This is Casey Roberts.
Good night, everybody.
And Dexter. Thank you once again.
Have a good night.
All right, so long, folks.